Tesla 110 volt charging and what's kind of my experience on this. I think this is an important video for me to make for many of you because I get asked a lot of questions regarding charging, and more often than not, more people ask me with regards to how they're going to charge their vehicles and how much charge do you really get out of your vehicle. I think it's really worth talking about the 110 because a lot of people have easy access to the 110 volt, basically your regular everyday outlet. So let's get right into it, get the intro started, and we'll talk about it. All right, so what did I do? Basically, I came home around 3 o'clock one day and I decided I'm gonna record, before I plug in, I'm gonna record what I'm doing. And so that's what I did. I plugged in the car and I basically had around 66%, and that was around 3:10 p.m. And so that afternoon I basically just plugged the car in and just forgot about it. I didn't have to use that car the whole night. I basically didn't need it till the next morning, which was I put it down at 7:02 a.m. and at 7:02 I ended up with a 84%. So I basically plugged it in at 66%. I ended up with 84% overnight, costing me nothing. It's part of just basically plugging the car in where I live, so it works. That's a wonderful little thing because, again, I don't have to bother fueling. So you're thinking, okay, well, it's not a big deal, but it kind of is because you're getting a decent enough charge that you don't really need to worry about it. And that's a wonderful thing. Now, as for me, I drive a great deal. I'm always on the road. I'm always out. I'm always doing the things I need to do. For me, that day, I decided, you know what, after I leave, I'm going to kind of keep track of what I did. Well, what I did was I drove about 80 kilometers that day. Not a lot of, for me, that's not too much, but I drove the whole day around 80 kilometers. I came home and I decided to take a snapshot of how my consumption went and where I was. Now, this was not planned, but ironically I literally ended up back at the 66% after I came home. And this is, again, driving 80 kilometers. It's a wonderful feeling when you can come home, I plug it back in, and once again, the car is ready to go. I was getting basically 1 kilowatt to 2 kilowatts per hour. It seemed like pretty much very stable at 1 kilowatt. 1 kilowatt doesn't sound like a lot, but it sure adds up. You went from 66 to 84. So essentially I got 18%, unless I can't count. 18% is a lot of charge. And so I got 18% for doing, just plugging it in. I didn't have to do anything. And now I'd like to point out where I live here, I have a ton of hills to deal with. So even when I leave in the morning, I got massive hills to go up and down on. You got traffic and blah, blah, blah. So you are wasting a lot of energy. Now, in my case, I obviously, throughout the day, I wasted and literally pretty much what I left it at the previous day. I charged it up overnight, got up to 84, and then I basically got back to the same thing. If you're thinking about it, it's a 16-hour charge, and so you're doing good. You're basically looking at like, well, you're not doing that great if you think about it. It was a 16-hour charge. You get 18%, not the greatest, but it is enough. For you, it depends on how much you drive every single day. Now, to put this into perspective, this obviously depends greatly on where you live. So, in a scenario where you're not using up a lot of energy that day, maybe it's just from the way you're driving, right? Your driving habits obviously come into play on how much energy you're going to use up. Ultimately, for me, I always take care of how I drive. I like to drive normal. On this day, however, I didn't plan on doing the finishing numbers, so to kind of show you at the end of the day. So that's 66% at the very end of the day. It does include me kind of playing around with the car. I just, took off a little bit faster here, took off a little bit faster there, maybe went like tiny bit over the speed limit here and there. So it wasn't exactly your everyday drive, but nevertheless, 80 kilometers, went back to 66%, came home, plugged her back in, and by basically the next day, I'm ready to go again. So I'm going to be curious to see what I have in the morning, but that's not the point. I'll have approximately the same thing, around 84%. And that's great. Tomorrow I actually have less driving to do. So when I charge up tomorrow night, I am going to gain more than I gained from the last previous nights. You can just plug your car in overnight and not have to worry about charging. With that said, because I am the kind of person who likes to go to the superchargers, obviously with the Model S, we do get free supercharging. So maybe I'm not as careful as most people would be, but I love going to the superchargers. That's where I meet a lot of you as the subscribers. I meet a lot of other wonderful, amazing Tesla owners. And so for me, I like to take sometimes in the afternoons if I have time, if I'm not recording. I basically like to just get in my car with my wife and we go down to the supercharger, whichever one it may be. And there we get a chance to just kind of sit back and talk to a lot of you. So for me, I'm not that concerned about charging at home. However, I kind of wanted to see how would it be for somebody who's, in a position where they don't want to use the superchargers as much. If you have a plug, a 110 plug, and you're only doing around 100 kilometers a day, honestly, you're fine. You shouldn't have any issues, and you really shouldn't need to go to a supercharger really that often. If I maintain this throughout, let's say, a month, which I have, I would end up usually at a supercharger maybe once or twice a month in that case. And it has a lot to do with the fact that I basically finish my day job and then I come home and I do a lot of recording. Now, if I'm going out to do recording for you guys, I typically end up stopping at superchargers. So I just kind of top up. If I go on road trips, by all means, I obviously use superchargers, but do I have to? And the biggest question, obviously, with everybody is what kind of plug should you have? Now, if you have a 220, obviously you're going to be better off. It's going to charge that much faster. It's going to be that much better for you, especially overnight. But you're going to find yourself where more than likely you won't need to charge every night. Now, just like myself, I don't actually need to charge every night, depending on the sites I go to, depending on what I'm doing. If I am in a position where I'm just going up to check up on my guys and let's say here or there, or if I'm taking I'm working somewhere locally, then I'm using up even less kilometers per day than here, about half that. And so if I maintain that charge, I'm always going to be, around the 90% or 80% mark, and it's just no point. Now, you might be also questioning, like I said, my car went up to 84%, and that's because I have my charge limit set to 90%. So I like to charge up to 90%. If you check any Tesla, it's going to tell you the last little bit is actually where you go on a trip. So anything from 90 to 100, 90% to 100%, that's where you want to charge if you're going on big trips. Even that, I don't actually recommend. I just say keep it at 90%. You'll be more than fine. You're not topping out the battery. That's basically the whole story behind it. Realistically speaking, I think it's an amazing thing. Having, just regular everyday plug, something that's you have pretty much anywhere and everywhere, you get an idea. You really get a sense of how much charge you get. This is, I'm hoping, very useful for many of you guys if you're thinking about going on trips. If you're going to go on trips and you end up somewhere where you're staying overnight, you'll be able to take that in kind of in a play, because, so let's say, for example, you're going somewhere where there isn't a supercharger, but you're going to stay at the hotel, I don't know, let's say 12 hours. More often than not, what people do is they check in around 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock or even 4 o'clock. So if you're going to check in at 4 but check out the next day at 11, you've gotten a great deal of time to charge. So you kind of have an idea that you're going to get quite a bit of percentage on on a regular 110 outlet. So if the hotel you're staying at just has a 110 outlet, let's say on the outside of the building, and you really want to charge up, there you go, you can do that. Now, there are hotels obviously that have destination chargers for Teslas. I've run into a lot of them. Best Western is, I'm going to do a shout out. It's not sponsored video, but I'll do a shout out to Best Western, because when we did, for example, our bigger trip, we ended up running into Best Western, and Best Western did have chargers and destination chargers, Tesla destination chargers. So that was a huge help for just kind of enjoying the drives and being able to drive around the city and then coming back to the hotel and just charging up at the destination charger. But if you don't have that, at least you kind of get an idea of what a 110 does. And I highly recommend for everybody to do this. I recommend you take your car, you plug it into a 110 and gauge it so you kind of have an idea of how much would you get on a 110 if you ever run into problems. I think it's really important for everybody to know that. Currently, I can tell you in 16 hours, you can get around 18%. That says a lot. It really does. That's about it. That's what I have for you guys. So yeah, not bad. I think 16-hour charge and 18% of battery on a 110 outlet. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.